Everyone knows the story of Rocky Balboa, the boxer who started as an unknown fighter on the streets of Philadelphia and ended up with the opportunity of a lifetime, facing the world champion, Apollo Creed. Rocky, with his relentless determination and lion's heart, became a symbol of perseverance and courage. He wasn't just fighting his opponents in the ring, he was battling the hardships of life, the doubts of others, and his own insecurities. Hello, I'm Lucius Ravenscroft, and I've come from a parallel world to yours, but what if things didn't unfold the way you remember? What if, in this parallel universe where I reside, fate had a different hand to play? What do you expect will happen to Rocky? Will he achieve the victory he so desperately craves, or will fate, ever so unpredictable, take him down a path no one could foresee? Philadelphia, with its red brick buildings and cracked sidewalks, was the backdrop where this simple yet determined man faced the greatest battle of his life. The fight between Rocky and Apollo became one of the most epic in boxing history, but it was more than just that. It was a battle for respect, dignity, and self-confidence. Now, with the world watching, Rocky prepares to face the challenge that will define his life. The weight of expectations is heavy on his shoulders, but deep down, he knows that this fight is not just about winning or losing. It's about proving to himself that he can rise, no matter how many times he gets knocked down. Close your eyes and feel the weight of being Rocky Balboa. Hear the crowd's roars, see the blinding lights, and sense the pressure on your shoulders. It's the weight of an entire life condensed into a single, decisive moment. I'm not going to give you the answer now. Instead, I'm inviting you to walk alongside Rocky, to feel every punch, every moment of doubt, and together, we'll discover an ending that might just defy your expectations. Get ready, because this isn't the story you're used to hearing. This is a story about choices, about fate, and about the true nature of victory. The arena, packed and vibrant, felt like a world apart from the backstage where Rocky Balboa was preparing for the biggest fight of his life. Sitting on a bench, he was surrounded by a silence that contrasted sharply with the muffled roar of the crowd. Rocky took deep breaths, trying to control the growing nervousness in his chest. Each second seemed to drag on, and every thought turned to what this fight meant. He knew this was his chance to change everything. Mickey, his trainer, approached with the calmness of someone who had seen many battles. He knew that, at that moment, Rocky needed more than motivational words. He needed a truth that would strengthen him. "Rock, listen carefully," Mickey said, his voice raspy and firm. "You didn't get here by accident. You worked hard, harder than anyone else, and you deserve to be in that ring. But out there, when the bell rings, it's just you and Apollo. Remember this fight isn't just for a title, it's for who you are, for everything you've been through. Show them the heart you have. Show them who Rocky Balboa is." Rocky looked up and met Mickey's eyes. The pressure was immense, but knowing that Mickey believed in him gave him the strength he needed. "I'll give it everything, Mick," Rocky responded, determination finally taking the place of fear. Mickey, with a firm gesture, squeezed Rocky's shoulder. They were ready for whatever came next, and Rocky knew that, regardless of the outcome, he was there to prove something far more important than any belt. The bell rang, and the first round began. Rocky advanced with fierce determination, his punches heavy and precise. Apollo, the world champion, moved with the grace of a predator, dodging and countering with quick, sharp blows. In the early rounds, the fight was nearly balanced, with Apollo holding a slight advantage. He moved with calculated confidence, knowing he could control the pace of the fight. But Rocky, with his unyielding resilience, refused to give ground. He absorbed Apollo's punches, countering with everything he had, keeping the fight competitive and thrilling. The crowd, initially skeptical, began to get more involved, realizing that Rocky wasn't there just to survive, but to fight on equal terms. In the fifth round, Apollo decided it was time to show why he was the champion. He increased the pace, his punches fast and devastating. Rocky felt each impact reverberate through his body, but he remained steady. Apollo dominated the round, but Rocky didn't fall. He was being pushed to his limits, but not defeated. The crowd was divided, some admiring Apollo's mastery, while others began rooting for Rocky, the underdog who refused to give up. The eighth round brought a new twist. Rocky, feeling the fight slipping from his hands, found renewed strength within himself. He advanced with a ferocity that even surprised Apollo. His punches were powerful, and for the first time, Apollo truly felt the impact. Rocky landed a powerful hook that made the champion stagger. The arena erupted in cheers of support, believing that Rocky might actually achieve the impossible. When the bell rang, the fight seemed evenly matched once more. The eighth round was a crucial moment, where Rocky showed that despite the challenges, he was still in the game, fighting with every fiber of his being. But then, in the ninth round, everything changed. Apollo, realizing that Rocky was becoming increasingly dangerous, adjusted his strategy. He began moving with even more precision, each punch targeting Rocky's weaknesses. And then came the decisive blow. In a quick and nearly imperceptible move, Apollo launched a right hook that struck Rocky directly in the eye, the same eye that had been swollen and bruised since the early rounds. The pain was immediate and sharp, like a blade slicing through his face. His vision blurred, and Rocky knew at that moment that he was in serious trouble. But, as always, Rocky didn't give up. He fought with the heart of a lion, even with one eye nearly blind. Every second in the ring became a battle to stay on his feet. Apollo, seeing the opening, didn't hesitate. He attacked with a series of punches that would have been enough to knock out any other fighter. But Rocky, exhausted and battered, continued to resist, his willpower becoming his last line of defense. In the following rounds, Rocky was fighting more for honor than victory. He knew he couldn't beat Apollo in that condition, but he also knew he wouldn't go down without fighting until the very last second. The arena, once noisy, was now enveloped in a tense silence, with the crowd completely captivated by Rocky's endurance. Finally, the bell rang for the last time. Rocky, still standing but barely, looked at Adrian in the crowd. Even with impaired vision, he could feel her love and concern. He then turned to Mickey, who stood beside him, his face hardened by the pain of seeing his fighter suffer so much. When the decision was announced, and Apollo was declared the winner, Rocky felt a wave of heavy emotions. He had given everything, absolutely everything, but still, it wasn't enough. The tears came, and Rocky cried, not just for the loss, but for the dream that seemed to have slipped through his fingers. But as the crowd applauded, Rocky realized he had won something far more valuable than the belt. He had earned the respect of everyone who was there, and more importantly, the respect of himself. Even without the title, Rocky proved he was a true champion and what really mattered. That fateful night in the ring didn't just mark the end of a fight, it signaled the end of an era for Rocky Balboa. The injury to his eye, sustained amidst the chaos of exchanged blows, wasn't merely a physical wound, it was a deep cut to his soul. Rocky didn't just lose the clarity of his vision, he lost the clarity of who he was. The dream of being a champion, of raising the belt and being recognized as the best, was brutally torn away from him. And with it, an essential part of his identity shattered, leaving him adrift in a sea of uncertainty. The following days were a blur of silence and pain. Waking up without the purpose that drove him was like walking through an endless desert. The noise of the gym, the roar of the crowd, all of it had vanished, replaced by a heavy silence that filled the air around him. Rocky found himself trapped in a cycle of frustration, reliving the moments of the fight in his mind, feeling the blow to his eye over and over, as if the impact would never cease. The weight of defeat was suffocating, a shadow that followed him in every step, in every thought. But life, relentless in its continuity, demanded that he find a new path. With few options, Rocky found work as a butcher in his neighborhood, a job that starkly contrasted with the glory he once sought in the ring. The constant cold of the freezer, the sound of bone breaking under the blade of his knife, and the smell of raw meat were now his new companions. Each strike he delivered to the meat reminded him of what he had lost, but it was also a way to exorcise his anger and sadness. It wasn't the ring, but it offered him a routine, something to keep his hands and mind occupied, even if the emptiness in his heart remained. The daily interactions at the butcher shop became a new form of connection for Rocky. The customers, some old acquaintances, others new, brought with them stories and faces that reminded him of times gone by. Some recognized him as the fighter who almost defeated the great Apollo Creed, and those encounters were difficult. He responded with a weary smile, but each mention of his past in the ring was a subtle blow, a reminder that, to the world, he was an almost, close but not quite. There was also a young apprentice at the butcher shop who admired Rocky and frequently asked him questions about boxing. The boy, full of energy and dreams, saw Rocky as a hero, which only made the pain more acute. Every word Rocky spoke to the young man was laced with a bitterness he tried to hide. Adrian, always by his side, was the rock that kept him grounded. She knew that Rocky was at war with himself, that the pain of loss wasn't something that could be healed with time or words. She watched him quietly, offering support in her simplest gestures, a hand on his shoulder, a look of understanding. Adrian understood that Rocky needed to find a new purpose, something that would give meaning to his existence, but she also knew that this process would take time. And while she supported him, she knew he was in a new fight, a fight to discover who he was now, without the spotlight, without the glory. Acceptance of this new reality came slowly for Rocky. It wasn't an abrupt transformation, but a gradual process, full of ups and downs. There were days when he refused to accept what had happened, days when frustration took over, and he felt more lost than ever. Other times, he found a strange kind of peace in his new routine, in the small moments of silence while cutting the meat, in the simplicity of repetitive tasks that demanded his focus. But even as he adapted, something inside Rocky continued to hurt. Every corner he turned, every familiar face he encountered on the streets of the neighborhood, brought back the ghosts of what he had lost. He tried to avoid passing near the gym where he used to train because just thinking about that place made his breathing heavy and his chest tighten. But, as he had always done, Rocky moved forward. Because he didn't know how to give up, didn't know how to stop fighting, even if this fight was now against himself. And so, Rocky Balboa, the man who once came so close to glory, found himself on a new journey. It was no longer a journey to win titles or prove something to the world, but to discover who he was without the ring, without the fight, and to find peace in a life he never chose, but that was the only one he had left. Months had passed since the night Rocky Balboa left the ring for the last time. Life moved on, as it always does, but for Rocky, time seemed to have stopped in many ways. The days blurred together, and the routine at the butcher shop, which once seemed like a way to keep busy, began to feel unbearably monotonous. Each cut of meat, each superficial interaction with customers, only deepened the sense of emptiness. The ring, with all its brutality, was still preferable to the numbness of this new life. But Rocky knew there was something he needed to do to find some peace. He needed to confront the past. One afternoon, with the sun hidden behind heavy clouds, Rocky decided it was time to return to the old gym where it all began. For months, he had avoided that place, fearing what he might feel upon seeing the punching bags, the old gloves, and hearing the ropes creaking under the feet of other fighters. But that day, something pushed him back, perhaps an unconscious desire to understand what had happened, or who he had become. The gym, with its worn-out walls and the unmistakable smell of sweat and hard work, seemed smaller, quieter than he remembered. Every corner of that place was steeped in history, his history. As he walked through the gym, his steps echoing on the wooden floor, Rocky saw young boxers training. They moved with an almost electric energy, the same energy he had when he was younger, full of hope and the conviction that he could conquer the world. He watched in silence, every punch, every movement flowing with the confidence and lightness that only youth can bring. One of them, a skinny kid with bright eyes, noticed Rocky and approached him. The kid knew exactly who that man was, the fighter who almost dethroned the invincible Apollo Creed. But there was something more in that look, a mix of admiration and pity, as if the kid was seeing not just a legend, but also the shadow of the man he once was. "And now, Mr. Balboa? What's next?" the kid asked, his voice full of respect but also with a curiosity that only youth can have. Rocky hesitated. The kid's question brought a storm of thoughts to his mind. What was next? He thought about everything he had lost, the dreams that never materialized, and who he was now, a man who, in the eyes of others, might be broken. He thought about the way he carried, the expectations he had placed on his own shoulders, the life he had always wanted but seemed to have slipped through his fingers. But then, something became clear in his mind. He realized that his true worth wasn't in the title he never won, but in the constant struggle, in the resilience that kept him standing, even when everything seemed lost. "You know, kid," Rocky began, his voice low but firm, "sometimes life doesn't go the way you imagine. Dreams, they change, or maybe we change. But what's important is to keep going. It doesn't matter how many times you fall, what matters is how you get back up. In the end, what makes you a true champion isn't the title you win, but the person you become along the way." As the kid absorbed his words, Rocky found himself reflecting not only on his own life, but on what he might mean to others. Perhaps his greatest victory wasn't in the ring, but in accepting who he was now, with all his scars, both physical and emotional. It was there, in that old gym, surrounded by the sounds that had defined so many years of his life, that Rocky began to understand that the most important fight wasn't against Apollo, but against the expectations he had created for himself. True peace wasn't in the glory of the past, but in the acceptance of the present. The decision to return to the gym, which once seemed unthinkable, became a vital step in his journey of self-discovery. Rocky began to see that even outside the ring, he still had value, not as a fighter, but as a man who faced life head-on, who suffered defeats but refused to be defeated internally. As he left the gym, the weight he had carried for so long began to lift, replaced by a new light, a deeper understanding of himself. What was next? Maybe he didn't know yet, but for the first time in a long time, Rocky was at peace with that uncertainty. In the end, Rocky found something that many spend their entire lives searching for: peace. But this peace did not come immediately. It was a gradual process, built with patience and acceptance, like each brick of a house raised with effort and dedication. The work at the butcher shop, which at first seemed like a sentence, slowly transformed into a refuge, a place where Rocky found a new sense of purpose. The sound of the knife cutting meat, the pungent smell of fresh blood, and the routine that once felt suffocating now offered a kind of solace. It wasn't the ring, but it was a place where he could be useful, where his discipline and physical strength still held value. The butcher shop, with its white walls and cold metal counters, became a microcosm of a renewed life. What was once just a workspace now symbolized the acceptance of a new identity. The daily interactions with customers, which were once mechanical, began to hold new meaning. Rocky started to notice the details, the smile of an elderly woman as she received the perfect cut of meat, the joke he exchanged with a regular customer, the young people who would pass by and wave, remembering who he was. These moments, small and seemingly insignificant, began to build a sense of belonging, of community, something he had never felt so deeply before. Adrian, as always, was by his side throughout this transformation. Her love was the foundation that supported Rocky, and every gesture of hers, a smile, a touch, a word of encouragement, was another brick in the rebuilding of his life. Adrian saw what many did not, a man who, even away from the spotlight, was still a hero. Not for what he had done in the ring, but for what he was doing now, by accepting life as it was and finding beauty in simplicity. But it wasn't easy for Rocky to reach this point. There were days when he felt lost, questioning if he had made the right decisions, if he had done all he could. He remembered the visit to the gym, where he saw the young people training, full of energy and dreams he knew well, but that now seemed so distant. That visit affected him more than he admitted. It was there, in the place where it all began, that he finally understood that his true fight wasn't against Apollo or any other opponent, but against the expectations he had created for himself. And it was this understanding that helped him find peace. Rocky's greatest victory wasn't in the ring, but in life. He found happiness in simplicity, in the love that surrounded him, and in the acceptance of his new reality. The peace he felt now was different from any other feeling he had ever experienced. It didn't come from the adrenaline of a victory or the glory of a trophy, but from the sincere smile he offered to customers at the butcher shop, from the tranquility of a life well lived by Adrian's side. It was the smile of a man who had finally made peace with the past, who had accepted that life doesn't always follow the plans we make, but can still be beautiful and meaningful. And you, my friend, what would you do if you were in Rocky's place? Would you accept your new reality, or continue fighting against the inevitable? Perhaps, somewhere, in some parallel universe, the answers are different. Perhaps, in another world, Rocky is still fighting, still chasing that victory that always eluded him. But here and now, Rocky has found his true victory. And it wasn't an easy victory, but one he earned with every decision, every moment of acceptance, every sincere smile that now lights up his face. Because in the end, the true victory isn't in what we achieve, but in who we become.